Hey everybody, we're here, we're live. I'm alive, so that's a really good sign. I've also wearing this dress. I've realized I think my right shoulder is higher than my left shoulder. I don't think that's normal. I think I would have noticed that before. I think I might actually kind of tilt my whole body to the left a little bit right now. But I am also having weird back issues, and I always have back issues, so these ones are even weirder. Um, anyway, that's my random statement for the day. Just what is wrong with my shoulders? I'm seeing my chiropractor today. I've seen her twice this week already. I'm seeing her once more. I'm gonna ask her as I'm sitting there, like Jamie, am I crooked? She checks my legs a lot, but she doesn't always check my shoulders. So maybe I got something going on there. Oops. Pause. I just want to make my comment. I'm gonna quickly make my everyone comment, which I have ready. Dun, 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 dun. Everyone. So yeah, I've talked about AI and authors and how we work with AI a number of times, and we're going to be doing it again today. But I think it's worth doing, especially considering some of the things I've heard said lately that I'm kind of flabbergasted that are being said. It's kind of blown my mind that certain statements have been made, um, and I want to kind of harken back to how things have been in the past. Um, I'm sure a lot of people who are writing now wanted to be writers for ages. Hey, Deb, how's it going? Um, but a lot of people who right now want to be writers for ages. Like I wanted to be a writer. Um, Goodness, I think I was 12 when I was certain I wanted to be an author, and I wrote stories all through my teens. I kind of petered out a bit in my 20s. A lot of that was negativity around the idea of being a writer that caused me to do that. Plus, everybody was like, "You're good at computers. You should make a career with computers." Because the other thing I wanted to do was be a history professor, um, or a teacher in general. And everybody's like, "You can't make any money doing either of those things. So you're good with computers. So you should get into computers." And I don't necessarily regret that. I enjoy computers quite a bit, and it's given me a good foundation. It's given me a good backdrop. I I've learned a lot being in computers, sort of being in business and working with businesses that make things, and I've been able to use that to build a career and build a career beyond that because I've had to work with lots of people in lots of different situations. But that being said, where was I going with all of this? Oh yeah, I didn't really get into publishing until 2012 because before that the whole thing was gate kept, right? Like you had to get an agent, and before you could have an agent, you had to write the book and have a synopsis and probably get it edited to some degree so that it didn't look terrible when they asked for sample chapters and whatnot. And then that agent would have to be an agent who liked your book and who wasn't currently shopping a book too much like your book, because they can't represent two books that are too similar, because then how are they going to pitch both of them equally to publishers? And then they finally get a publisher and they'd want to make changes. Like it was this whole rigmarole to get a book out, and still is if you decide to go that route. Possibly with a little bit less rigmarole because they're kind of they put less into books now generally, so there's less upfront for them. Oh, weird. Was it acting strangely on YouTube, Monique? Hello, Victoria, as well. I said hi, Deb, right? I think I said hi to you. I remember I read your name. Um, and sorry, I got this person being rather strange on YouTube. Um, so I had to, where was I with all of this? Come on, brain, come back to me. Oh yeah, so talking about gatekeeping. So, this stigma is still around, but when the whole idea of self-publishing came out, people are like, "Oh, you're not a real author, you're self-publishing," because of that whole gatekeeping thing. And then we would get covers that were made with composite art, which is, by the way, the default way the covers are done now, where they take a bunch of stock art and they composite it together into a picture. And people are like, well, that's not a real cover, because it's just a bunch of stock photos that got glued together or something like that. Um, and then, when people started using things like Grammarly for their editing, it's like, well, your book isn't actually edited. Like, there's always been gatekeeping going on, people deciding that certain things aren't proper writing. I mean, there's people out there who I've talked to recently, like within the last year, who say that they don't think a book is actually like legit unless it was written by hand for the first draft. Some people have that for themselves, and that's okay. If you have that for yourself, that's fine. But some people actually like impose that view on other people. Oh, that makes sense, Monique. I get that. I'm glad there's nothing wrong with the feed. Hello, Monica and Mila as well. How are you? Um, so yeah, so funny. I meant to put the user in YouTube who's being weird into a timeout, and it banned them and removed their comments. I don't think I clicked the wrong button. Well, bye bye. Anyway, I, uh, I feel like that for whatever reason that sentiment still carries on, and to a certain point, it's kind of like a survivorship bias slash a there's a term for it. It's when you like if you suffer abuse and you then think that for someone else to be legitimate they have to suffer the same abuse. There's a term for that as well. Um, I feel like some of it is that, right? Like I had to walk on hot coals and broken glass to get where I am, and if you don't walk on hot coals and broken glass to get where you are, then you're just not doing it real. But that can be said about anything like in human history, right? Like if you don't actually have to like smelt the metal to make your cutlery, you don't actually like that's not real. You don't really understand what it's like to like, you know, live in this to have like good cutlery. I don't know. I'm just like there's so many things where we are building up and we now live on top of the shoulders of multiple prior generations who built up processes and systems to make things easier so you don't have to do it the hard way. And I think in many regards, like a lot of the tools we have now, the ability to self-publish, the ability to get covers inexpensively, are just part of that same process, right? Like, oh man, you don't got to walk 3 days to get 30 miles. Well, you're not like a real whatever. You're soft because you drive a car, that kind of thing. You don't ride a horse. You didn't raise that horse. You don't have a donkey pulling a cart, whatever it might be. That kind of gatekeeping is just honestly kind of exhausting to me. And it's also super hypocritical in every way, shape, and form, right? Like the fact that we have the printing press and don't have scribes copying every version of the book. Oh, you softies. Um, so I'm a really big believer that improvements help us most of the time. Not all improvements help us. Some improvements turn out to be downsides in disguise, and so that's a valid conversation to have. Um, but I think about like, and for those of you who follow me a lot, you might have heard me talk about this before. But you think about art, right, or music. Back in the day, 400 or 500 years ago, if you wanted to do art, you wanted to be a painter, you had to be super fucking rich, right? Or you had to find a sponsor, and part, not to put a fine point on it, probably do some sort of like personal acts with that sponsor. Like, I'm sure there was some relationships going on. I mean, I know there were in some cases. Like it wasn't like something you could just do. You had to have money to have leisure to be able to use that leisure to create art. And also, of course, like things like canvases and paints were expensive, or like the instruments to make music, the time to do those things, all of those things meant you had to be super wealthy. And so only the super wealthy could create art or commission art, or make music. Now you could do that. There were many ways of doing it low cost, obviously, but you were very limited in what you could do, as a result of just a lot of the restrictions in time, mostly the time to learn. Like imagine to people like hundreds of years ago being able to take like 4 years to learn how to do a thing without making any money, like in a non-apprenticeship format, to just sit and learn in a school how to do something would be like unheard of. That civilization could be at a point where people could spend, you know, um, 4 to 8 years. I mean, we actually spend probably what for them would have been a quarter of their lives, of their working lives, just learning how to do stuff and not being productive in that we aren't making things. So the amount of like foundational privilege that we all sort of sit on is super high to begin with. So to be like, oh, I think that you should be like, only using up to this level of foundational privilege, not this level of foundational privilege to create the thing. And if you don't do it this way, that's just, you're not doing it right. You're not being real. And so like one of the things that prompted this is that there was another writers writing group, and to start with, the admins called this shit out, so they didn't stand for it, but it was still said, where people were talking about using AI to do things, and some authors came in and said, "Why don't you go do something you're actually good at then? Why don't you go do find a career that you actually have skill at and not use AI?" And I was just really appalled by that, um, just because like one, holy shit, that's really rude. Um, I think that we should approach everybody first and foremost with grace and an assumption that we don't know their situation, right? Um, and second, if we do have feedback, if you don't have feedback that's not constructive, maybe don't give feedback, right? Um, you know, and, and so I was appalled by that, and that's kind of what spurred me on, made me want to talk about this. And hi, Ronnie, as well. How are you doing? Um, so like my thoughts on this a lot of kind of also come along the idea of all of these improvements in technology and access have been good for all of us, right? Like you can go on Spotify and find 50 bands you've never heard of that play music that's just amazing, or your service of choice, right? Whereas like in the genre that you listen to 50 years ago, there might have only been 50 bands that you could actually like get music from. Um, so we get the access to the ability to produce music, the access to instruments, the access to time, the access to easy distribution systems has been good for all of us. you know and like kind of going circling back to art, like it used to be that when people started doing digital art, people like, that's not real art, you're just drawing on a Wacom tablet that was like $1,000 or something like that, right? And now you can do it like on a $30 tablet, you can do it on your phone, and we accept that that's art now, and that's a creative process. And what we ended up doing was making it so that, yeah, you don't need to buy easels and supplies and paints and brushes and cleaners and all that to make art. You have this handy dandy, amazing, reusable etch a sketch, that you can make as much art as you want to on it. And it's been good for all of us. We've all benefited from making the ability to create art more accessible. And in fact, that's, for everybody probably listening, that's like our entire career, right? Our the existence of our career is us benefiting from the ability to make creating art more accessible. And to assume that like art can only be created through like dire circumstances and just like the gnashing of teeth, and every other form of art is like, you must be low skill to do that. It's just crazy, quite honestly. It's asinine. um Victoria says, was the discussion in the other group about using AI for book cover art or writing books with AI? I believe it was writing books with AI is how it came up. People were asking for help with prompting to help them get what they needed out of the books. And so like, yeah, with Jill and I at the Writing Wives, we have a pretty open view of AI. We're like, hey, if it helps you, use it. If it doesn't help you, don't use it. Or if there's a part of the process that you really enjoy doing yourself, you shouldn't feel obligated to use AI for that. You shouldn't be like, oh man, I could probably do better if I was using AI to actually help me write the story. I like writing the story. That's like my favorite part. Um, because for me, I can't I don't know what's going to happen next unless I put my shoes in my shoes. I put my feet in the shoes of the characters at the moment. I can't. I don't get the right feel for it if I try to outline. So I really enjoy the process of being with the characters in the moment and sitting there trying to think of like, what's an amazing thing I can do that can drive forward my bigger story arc, be interesting, and like make for like an interesting interaction between the characters as well, and possibly character growth. Although I don't feel like characters always need to grow in every situation that they're in. Um, I love that. But I also really love art from my books. I love like taking an image in my mind and making that image something my readers can see. And I've done a lot of that. I've paid for a lot of expensive art and photo shoots and all sorts of things. I've had costumes and weapons and all sorts of stuff made for my books. Um, and it's been very expensive. I've probably spent about $30,000 or $40,000 outside of book covers on art for my books. But like now, I can use AI and actually craft something um, that I think can really improve the experience of my readers, and I can do it without costing a fortune. And I still do use artists for all sorts of things. In fact, I possibly use them more than ever before. Um, because in a way the AI has like facilitated this demand for more. I think that's pretty. It's an interesting sort of like cyclical thing that's happened. Um, Monica says, "I'm no fan of suffering for any art. Art should be making should be a joyous process." I agree completely. Um, so like, and just in case some people are, because a lot of people have joined our group in the last while, and you might not have heard my thoughts on this before, but there's the question of, well, is AI art theft? And um, different AIs are built different ways. I think you could make an argument that certain AI, the way that it has stored information and can recreate information, is on the sketchier side of copyright and possibly not fair use. And some of the other AIs out there have been trained entirely on licensed um, data sets that they licensed. Or some AI models were actually made for educational purposes at universities, and then people don't read the fine print before they go and use it commercially. Like there's a lot of different scenarios where maybe the AI was made fine, but people used it in a way that they shouldn't have used it. I don't know where OpenAI's AI is going to go in the future, but up until very recently, OpenAI, at least up until the last time I checked, they're restructuring OpenAI as a company right now. They respected the do not train lists, so they wouldn't train their AI on any art that artists submitted, saying, "I don't want AI to train on this art." Although I was surprised too that like AI image generation tools only have a base library of about 6 billion images, which is like less than one picture for every person on the planet. When you consider how many pictures there are out there, it's actually a shockingly small amount of content that they've been trained on. I was kind of surprised how little it was that they needed to train them on. Um, but sort of the idea here is like how do AI learn? Well, at the core of it, we show them existing art and existing words and existing music, and they absorb that, sort of like understand the relationship between things. AI doesn't actually understand the intent. It just understands the relationship between things and what are the most likely relationships to exist between any two things, be it words or musical notes or pixels of an image or something like that. And then they reproduce the most likely thing to be next, given the prompt that they were given as well, within some constraints of that prompt. Plus, you can add in chaos and all sorts of other things to add like an element of randomization into it. But the core of it, they're looking at existing art. And so I think to myself, okay, if I'm writing in a new genre, um, and I paid a person to read a whole bunch of other books in that genre and then list out for me the most important tropes and how to convey those tropes, or how other people in other genres convey those tropes, and then leverage that, in many regards, that's a lot like what using an AI would be like. Maybe they're not actually doing the actual writing, but they did look at other copyrighted works and study them to pull out the key elements. And same thing with painting. Like if you go to art school, you're going to spend a while, depending on the art school, like actually recreating the art of masters, understanding how they did their brushstrokes and what like you will literally copy. Um, if you want to learn how to do woodworking, the very first thing you're going to do is build stuff off of plans that you find. Those plans are probably copyrighted. You're probably licensing them in some fashion. But then maybe you modify those plans to make your own twist, and then you go and sell that at a craft fair. By a lot of interpretations of the law, you actually are breaking copyright when you do that. Um, so it's it's not significantly different than what we do as humans all the time. Now, of course, a lot of questions come into play about like, well, corporations are making money off this in the middle, and a lot of people aren't super happy with the ethics of corporations to begin with, and I get that. I think those are actually some valid issues. But the interesting thing is I don't know that AI, certainly not all AI, some AI actually is, but most AI, is it actually theft or is it not? It's actually really hard to tell. Um, and I don't and I think that AI can be used badly. Like, for example, I can actually trick AI into drawing, Mickey Mouse as Darth Vader, which is definitely breaking copyright, and or patents, depending on what shapes are used and whatnot. But I could also hire an artist on Fiverr to do the same thing, provided I find an artist who's willing to do something like that. Um, Half of like the Halloween decor costumes that people buy on Etsy are breaking copyright because they're a copyrighted character that someone's making a costume for or something like that. Now, a lot of these companies choose to look the other way, but technically it's breaking copyright. So it's interesting how we kind of apply a bit of a double standard to AI and then we get pretty vitriolic about it. And I'm not a fan of doing that. I'm a fan of building people up, and helping people do more. And AI is actually really good now at like learning your voice. And like Jill's used AI to write things that I can't tell the difference between Jill writing it and the AI writing it. Um, it's really quite impressive what it does. And Jill enjoys the opposite side of story creation for me. She enjoys like being a director and having a cast that she tells them what to do and what the plot is, and then they go and do it. For me, I want to be down there in the weeds with the actors, doing things. Liv says this makes me wonder if AI can be used to bring about artistic equity. It levels out variations in talent. I think it will to a certain extent, um, and I think that's not a bad thing. And it also makes art more accessible too. So, and also like it might make it cheaper and faster for us to write books. Because one of the problems with being an author is it takes a freaking long time to write a book, right? Which like limits our earning capacity, unless you're willing to kill yourself, which I've done. So like, does it actually help in that regard? All right, there's a whole bunch of comments going on in YouTube, and I've missed those. Well, I didn't miss them. I saw them. Not YouTube, Facebook. So Victoria says, when you publish on Amazon, you have to declare if you used AI. Is this just for collecting data? Is it also declared to potential readers that content has been created by AI? I don't think they reveal that to readers at all. Um, so yeah, and yeah, that's right. Amazon has AI generation tools in their A plus modules. Amazon has a vested interest in making money off of AI. So they're very likely not going to bring the hammer down on people for using AI. I like Jill. What Jill says here: no one has to approve my process. I'm not seeking permission. Yeah, and that was an interesting thing too that Jill kind of brought up from some of the conversations she saw, where people were saying like, "This is the process. You write the book, you put it away, you agonize over it for a bit, you read it, you declare it to be crap, and you rewrite it and stuff like that." And like that's very prescriptive. Um, and I don't like prescriptiveness. I like being descriptive. If I'm talking to someone offering them help, I'm going to describe to them tools and systems and ideas that can help them. I'm not going to prescribe a method for them to follow. And I believe in this in all ways, to be descriptive, not prescriptive. Unless you're talking to your children, then you can be prescriptive from time to time, or you're someone's boss, then you can be prescriptive as well. But when it comes to other people that I'm like actually trying to help and who I do not have a pre-established authority relationship with, I am descriptive, not prescriptive. And even in those cases, actually being descriptive works better than being prescriptive. Um, I recognize that in some scenarios, prescriptiveness is important, like the law should be prescriptive. Um, Dana says, this is exactly what I said yesterday in the same point. Of course I read the book. Oh yeah, you're talking about like, do you actually read the book and go over it, sort of thing? Yes, absolutely. Jill says, I used AI this morning to create 75 to 90 social media posts, create AMS targets, create another book's AMS targets in less than 2 hours. It's about spending less time doing things we know how to do, streamline. Yeah, and to be honest, like if you were to use AI to be doing that, you'd be taking away my job. And I'm okay with that, quite honestly, because I'd rather not do it as a job either, to be honest. But like, a lot of people are kind of like, oh, I'll use AI for this and not for that. It's like, at some point you're taking away someone's job. But like, I also think like we've been doing that all along. The very first time that we made a tool for picking lice out of our hair and didn't have the monkey behind us doing it we were taking away someone's job, right? Like it's always been a matter of taking away someone's job. We made tractors to plow the fields, we took away people's jobs. Now instead of like needing a team of people to plow a field, you can do it with one guy in a tractor. You can do all those fields. And but that's okay because we'd all be rather be doing other things. No one wants to be walking behind a horse plowing a field all day long. No one wants to be like manually making shoes. I mean, that still happens a lot. A lot of shoemaking is manual. But we're all happy seeding drudgery to machines so we can do more interesting things. And I think that's good, to be honest. Yes. Jill got a cute little alien dude from Alien. Yeah, we did have to make an alien dude that doesn't look like a proper xenomorph. I think the one we have is probably still a little bit too close to a xenomorph. But it was kind of funny how the AI could do that. Monica says, I worked with AI to fully outline my next novel last night. It took us 30 minutes. I love that. I love that for you. Victoria asked what platform is Jill's favorite. I don't need to answer that. Yeah, Jill has always hated the minutia of writing. It's true. She really has. Yeah, getting past that blank page terror of the first draft, that's totally legit. And another way to think of AI too, like even today, I've never used AI for writing. I have all sorts of things I like to use AI for and more that I want to use it for, but I've never used it for writing. But today I thought to myself, I have my characters using a laser to get through a door that is unexpectedly thicker than it should be. And I can't think of what is behind that door. Like, it has to be something I haven't done before. What could be behind that door? And I thought, you know what? I could probably ask AI and it could come up with something just off the wall. And that would be super helpful right now. I might actually still do that because I haven't actually yet figured out. I have a note, figure out what's behind this door, and I went off and wrote something else. This is great. I love the conversation you guys are having here. Parody, and that's allowed. I think we might have to make it a little bit more parody, or like maybe we have to give it horns or something. Kenzie on my Facebook page says AI is here to stay, and we need to find a way to live with it. I agree. Ironically, this is actually what I write about in my books. A big part of my books is humanity. My books take place further in the future, but the idea is humanity has created its successor species. Now what? Now how do we live? We made a species that we're going to share resources with and have to fight for like laws and supremacy with. Oops, you think women getting rights is going to be tricky. It has been tricky and continues to be tricky. It's like crap. We're going to do this all over again with AI. It's like it's going to be an event, and it's not going to be clean. But I do like the fact that we can use it in many ways to make our lives better. I do think there's a lot of scammy AI stuff out there. There's a lot of AI stuff. It's like, wow, this reminds me of how back in the 80s and 90s, everything said digital. Remember that? Like everything had the word digital plastered on it. Like somehow it was going to be so much better because it was digital. But something I do want to say about the Writing Wives and our Facebook group that you're probably listening to this in, or our membership over on School, is that we don't tolerate people attacking other people for what their opinions are or what tools they use or anything like that. We don't have like official stances on the kinds of tools that you should use for your books. We do have stances on how we should operate with each other and communicate with each other, and how as authors we have enough things out there working against us, and we should be working to bring each other up and not tear each other down, which I think is a good way to do it. So you can if you want to talk about these topics in our group or any place in our circle like that, you can feel free to do that, because we will ensure that everybody gets to sort of like say their bit and sort of feel free to share what they're working on and not have to fear being judged for it or anything like that. Let's see. The conversation right now in chat is all about novel crafter using Claude and Chat GPT. Jill's a big Claude fan. So yeah, Dana says, sort of probably in regards to me, like struggling to think of like what new thing can I do. She says she needs unique twists from rom-com to rom-com, so they aren't all the same. It's a constant ask. Yeah, it totally is, right? That's actually one of the things that caused me to sort of burn out on writing. I hit a point where I'm like, I am writing like my 500th shootout in a corridor in a spaceship, and I just can't do it anymore. I need something new, but I was kind of in a rut and I couldn't think of what new thing there was to write, And I actually think that like AI could help. Other cool thing I've heard someone say is like if I get an idea at 2 o'clock in the morning, I want to start brainstorming about it. My crit partner will be pretty upset if I call them, but I can hit up an AI and ask it some questions about some ideas off of it and solidify a plan. So it's kind of got some cool advantages like that too. One thing that I've mentioned this recently, and something I'm a pretty big believer in. I do want to make sure that we all sort of keep in mind that one thing we don't want is we don't want a small number of corporations to control all of the AI out there. Um, so I'm actually excited about the fact that new computer components are coming out that's going to make it easier to run AI models on your personal computer. Um, the new Intel processors that just they're not they're I think they're fully announced now. The review embargoes have lifted today. They come with what are called NPUs, neural processing units on the processors. So we're actually able to do more on-premise AI stuff. So I'm excited about that. Um, that we're going to have tools to in our homes do more AI. Because one of the things I would like is not have to ship off everything that I want to process to some sort of third party where they actually end up owning some part of what I submitted to them. Just from like an IP ownership standpoint, I want to be able to control it myself. So I think that's something that can be worth thinking about too. It's not super easy to do yet, but I really think like in the next 3 to 5 years, we might actually even have like AI boxes in our house that like if we want to have AI tasks handled or anything like that, it actually all runs through the AI box in our house. And we control the data and the access and the models and everything. I think that will actually be super cool. Um, Data is all about the 2 a.m. brainstorming. Yes, that's when your dog needs to be walked, right? Exactly. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of the spiel that I want to have here today. I just kind of want to hash out that topic, share my thoughts. Some of you've already heard them before, but share my thoughts again on it, and and let you know that we are a safe space for you to talk about different tools or ideas or things that you want to do, to help you accelerate. I have book covers out there that are made via AI. Jill has books that have AI writing in them. I don't have any of those yet. I use AI art in ads all the time. Um, and very rarely have I ever heard anyone catch any flack for AI art being used in their ads. Usually it's from other authors, actually. It's authors attacking authors. I'm not aware of any time readers have actually um, come at an author. Well, maybe once. Some readers actually commented, and I think it was because the AI art just had an error in it that wasn't spotted before it was put up. It's here, it's here to stay. And I think if we're smart about how we use it and we make sure that we use quality stuff and we do a good job with it, because it's like anything, AI can do sloppy work or work that doesn't look that good, just like a human can do. So it's still a matter of like making sure that we approve of the quality of the work being done. I think it's going to be like something that sticks around and something that's going to make our lives better and help us accelerate. Um, and we can all use it in different ways, and that's totally okay. Yeah, that's true. Jill's books are bestsellers and have amazing reviews. She's getting great reviews on her books. I have to say, as well, like AI is actually probably better at grammar than a lot of us are. You're going to get more grammatically correct stuff coming out of ChatGPT and Claude than most of us are going to do in our rough draft. So it actually probably helps in that regard too. Uh, I think right now, Victoria, I think Midjourney is the best AI art generation tool out there. Leonardo's good. There's some other ones that are up and coming, but I think Midjourney's top dog right now. It's the one I use the most. You're of course, in our classes. If you go into school and go into classroom, there's one called like, oh, it's not the AI classroom. I think it's just called like Publishing Mastery or something like that. There's actually an AI class I taught in there where I actually go through how to use a whole bunch of different kinds of prompting in Midjourney, and there's a prompting cheat sheet as well. And then there's also a thing in there on how to use Photoshop to actually build like really nice looking covers with good typography and whatnot. And I even share one of my Photoshop templates that you can use for that sort of thing. Ideogram is quickly catching up to Midjourney. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good ones out there. It's pretty awesome. Generative fill on Canva and Photoshop are good. Photoshop can kind of go off the rails sometimes, but it's getting a lot better. And Photoshop actually, and Microsoft and Adobe Firefly exclusively are trained on licensed art. Now, the exact way that they license the art sort of irks some people because they kind of just slipped into their terms and service saying that they will train on a host of things. Um, so there, some people are annoyed by that. But at this point, I feel like if you haven't opted out, it's pretty well known in the community. Like if you give Adobe Art to store or to host in the cloud, and you don't tell them not to train on it, they're going to train on it. So they're licensed. Like I said, you might not agree with sort of how they got the license, but at least it is licensed, and they will respect opt out as well. Oh, that's unfortunate, Linda. I do worry. There's a couple of industries I worry about. Um, it's editors, although I think you need an editor. I'm of the opinion that that books should be edited, and they should be edited by a human, because even if I get AI to write a bunch of stuff, I'm going to splice it together, and I'm going to make mistakes when I do that. Trust me, like I'm going to make a ton of mistakes. So I think books need editors. I worry about narrators though, because I kind of feel like that's a job that may go away. You know, although there'll be purists who will only listen to human narrated stuff, so there'll still be a market, but it's not going to be as big a market. So I do worry about that. You don't need one that can do really awesome typography. You have me to do typography. You just haven't asked me. I know you want to do it yourself, honey, so I respect that. AI novel translation is Scribe Shadow. That is the place. That's the joint. Or Shadow Scribe. I think it's Scribe Shadow, right? I could be wrong. I'm just reading through the comments here. Where do you create your fonts for book covers? I don't create fonts. Font creation is like an art form in and of itself. I just find the font I want. There's like millions of fonts, and most of them are like $5 to $15. So I just find the font I want. I go to like, I just search for like different types of fonts. And the great thing too is you'll find articles that like list out cool fonts that have certain vibes, and you can see different ways to use them, which is pretty cool too. Yeah, I know you're not using editors, honey. I disapprove, but I'm not going to be prescriptive. So you can do what works for you. All right. I think I said my spiel on this particular topic. I don't want to belabor it and go on for too long. But again, I'm just going to reiterate that I'm okay with whatever tools you use for creating your books, as long as like you're not writing in like the blood of emperor penguins or something like that. Do what works for you. Um, as an author, I now just had like this crazy story idea that involves something like that. But no blood from emperor penguins. Leave them alone. Leave the penguins alone. Um, I'm okay with people use whatever tools they want to use. I support people in whatever process they have to use to get their stories written and to create more stories. I think it's important. So I'm behind that. Um, and I will let you guys go. Have a fabulous afternoon. Um, you know, guard your mind, guard your headspace. Um, don't let other people into your head when you're evaluating what's going to be right for you. Do what's right for you. What works for you works for your process, and also understand that what works for one book might not work for another either. Actually, so um, you be okay with changing your process. Try new things. You never know what might end up being the thing that sort of unblocks you and gets your productivity going again. And of course, remember that like every time we advance technology around art creation, it's been good for all of us. So I think there's good things ahead. All right, folks, I will see you next Thursday. Have a fabulous day and have a great weekend.